Hi guys, welcome back to part 4 of dermatology. We're going to continue with bullous diseases which we studied in part 3. This is a continuation of that. Okay, so what I need you to understand here guys, now whatever we studied in part 3, okay, that was the clinical aspects of intraepidermal versus subepidermal, the different signs, that was Nikolsky, bulla spread sign, right? We're going to apply all those concepts over here. In this tabular form, I have differentiated diseases. Okay, so first let us look at the difference between pemphigus foliaceus and pemphigus vulgaris. I already told you earlier what vulgaris means. It means most common form. Okay, now guys, what I need you to understand here, okay, from this table is this first three, that is the level, autoantibodies and target protein, are going to be the same for pemphigus foliaceus and pemphigus vulgaris. Okay, let us look into it. Now let us look at the level. Both the levels are going to be intraepidermal. Okay, their autoantibodies are going to be IgG. Their target proteins are also going to be desmosomes, okay, for both foliaceus and vulgaris. Where they start differentiating is from the target antigen. Remember guys, the target protein is going to be the same, that is desmosomes, but the target antigen is going to be different. For foliaceus, very important, the target antigen is going to be desmoglein 1. What is it going to be? It is going to be desmoglein 1. How am I going to remember this? F for foliaceus, that is first, right, and the number 1. Okay, so that's how you'll remember it. Whereas guys, for vulgaris, it is going to be desmoglein number 3 is going to be more common than that of 1. Okay, so this is the target antigen. Now guys, let us look at the distribution of desmoglein in the skin. Okay, we already know desmoglein 1 is for foliaceus. Now guys, if you guys remember clearly, which I mentioned earlier in the previous chapter about the intraepidermal and the subepidermal, right? So you already know this is my epidermis. So guys, if I keep this as my midline of my epidermis, right, then there will be an upper epidermis and a lower epidermis. This is the upper epidermis and this is the lower epidermis. Okay, what you need to know here is that in pemphigus foliaceus, desmoglein 1, it is going to be in the upper epidermis, but it is going to be below the stratum corneum. And guys, as discussed in part 3, what was below the stratum corneum called as? Very good. The split is going to be called as subcorneal split. Okay, hence, okay, that is a distribution. So we already know desmoglein 1, it is present in the upper epidermis below the stratum corneum. That is why the level of split is going to be subcorneal. Understood? Now let us look in pemphigus vulgaris what is happening. Desmoglein number 3. Okay, let us again go back to the image. Okay, desmoglein number 3, this is your epidermis, right? It is going to be in the lower epidermis. It is going to be in the lower epidermis. How will I remember? Pemphigus foliaceus was desmoglein 1. So 1 meaning it is on top, right? 3 comes a little below. So that is why it is present in the below epidermis. But guys, it is going to be above it is going to be above your stratum basale. Above means what? Supra. So what is going to be the level of split guys? The level of split is going to be suprabasal. Understood? So let us look over here at the table. Desmoglein number 3, it is going to be present in the lower epidermis above the stratum basale. And what is the level of split? The level of split is going to be suprabasal in nature. Understood? Now let us look at the distribution guys in the oral cavity. Okay, see, desmoglein 1 is always in low concentrations. Hence, this patient with pemphigus foliaceus will not have any oral lesions. No oral lesions will be present. Understood? Why? Because desmoglein 1 is in low concentration. Understood? Whereas guys, desmoglein number 3, how will I remember? 1 is a little lesser than 3, right, in number. So remember it like that. 3 means more, so high concentration. So desmoglein 3 is going to be in high concentration. Hence, this is very important point. Patients with pemphigus vulgaris, 90 to 95% of the patients are going to come with oral lesions. Understood? I hope you guys have understood this table. Let us move on now. Now this is another table that will differentiate between pemphigus vulgaris and bullous pemphigoid. Okay, the earlier table was between pemphigus foliaceus and vulgaris. Now this is vulgaris, pemphigus vulgaris and bullous pemphigoid. Okay, now again let us look at the level. As discussed earlier, pemphigus vulgaris is going to be intraepidermal in origin, whereas guys, bullous pemphigoid is going to be subepidermal. Again, let us go up at the image. Let us look what subepidermal is. See, below the stratum basale, right? This is a sub, means below the epidermis is called as subepidermal. Okay, below the epidermis is called as subepidermal. This is my subepidermal. So bullous pemphigoid is going to be subepidermal in origin. Their autoantibodies are going to be the same, IgG. Now guys, if you remember in foliaceus and vulgaris, the target protein was the same, that was desmosomes. But over here it's different. The target protein itself for vulgaris, as discussed earlier, it is desmosomes. But guys, for bullous pemphigoid, it is going to be hemidesmosomes. Okay, hemidesmosomes. I hope you guys remember from earlier part, hemidesmosomes is present in the basement membrane zone, right? So this is your hemidesmosome. It's a protein, right? Next guys, what you need to know is what is a target antigen. Target antigen, as discussed earlier, is going to be desmoglin number 3, more common than that of 1 for bullous pemphigus vulgaris, whereas it is going to be bullous pemphigoid 2 more than that of 1. Okay. Next guys, process. Let's look at the process. Acantholysis is going to take place in pemphigus vulgaris, whereas there is no acantholysis in bullous pemphigoid. Acantholysis. So guys, tell me one thing. If acantholysis is taking place, what kind of cells will I get? I will get acantholytic cells on Zank smear. Okay, we will discuss that later in the investigation. But I just want you to know, because of the process of acantholysis, I will get, what will I get? I will get acantholytic cells on Zank smear, okay, for pemphigus vulgaris. Next guys, let us look at to the clinical features. First, let us discuss for pemphigus vulgaris. The age group guys, 40 to 60 years old, whereas in bullous pemphigoid, it is going to be the old Buddha people, 60 to 80 years old, okay, 60 to 80 years old. Differentiate on the basis of age. Very important now guys, clinical bulla. Okay, bulla. I hope you guys remember in the earlier part which we spoke about the flaccid bulla and the tense bulla. Flaccid bulla, how will I differentiate? There will be wrinkling present, right? There will be wrinkling present in flaccid bulla, whereas my tense bulla is going to be ekdam tense, round, right? Let me show you an image. Okay, let me see. Yes, very good. So this is going to be my flaccid bulla. I can see the wrinkling over here, right? This is the beautiful wrinkling, whereas guys, you can see this beautiful shining tense bulla. Okay, so tense bulla is going to be in the case of bullous pemphigoid. Okay. And one more thing that you need to remember, this bulla is going to be itchy. It is going to be an itchy bulla. Okay. Flaccid bulla seen in pemphigus vulgaris. Now guys, in case if the bulla ruptures, what happens in pemphigus vulgaris? Since it is a flaccid bulla, when it will rupture, it will extend. What will it do? It will extend. And since it will extend, use common sense and tell me something that is extending, will it heal easily? No. So patients with pemphigus vulgaris, their bulla ruptures, it extends. Extension will lead to no healing. So this patient will not have any healing. Whereas guys, since in bullous pemphigoid, it's going to have a tense bulla. It's going to have a tense bulla. So it will rupture and it will heal. Okay. So what will it do? It tends to heal. So if it tends to heal, will there be an extension? No. No extension is seen in this patient. Understood? Now let us move on to Nikolsky sign. I hope you remember what Nikolsky sign is. If I'm applying tangential pressure, the upper epidermis, it moves away from the lower dermis, right, from the lower level of skin. So that is your Nikolsky sign, okay, on pressing tangential pressure. So guys, it is going to be present in patients with it is going to be present in patients with pemphigus vulgaris, but it is going to be absent in patients with bullous pemphigoid. Okay, now guys, bulla spread sign, I hope you remember what bulla spread sign is. Let us look to it. This is a bulla spread sign. Okay, now we know flaccid bulla is seen in pemphigus vulgaris and tense bulla is seen in bullous pemphigoid. What happens in bulla spread sign? Again, I will apply the pressure is applied over the bulla. Okay, what happens in case of flaccid bulla, as mentioned in part 3? If I'm applying pressure over here, it will move to the adjacent skin. And tell me guys, is this can you see, is it regular or irregular? Very good, it is irregular and it is angulated. It is irregular and it is angulated. Whereas guys, in tense bulla, what is happening? I am applying pressure, it is moving to the adjacent skin, but guys, it is round and regular. Okay, so this is the finding on bulla spread. Okay, so you can see bulla spread sign, irregular angulated border. Understood? Why? Because it's a flaccid bulla, right? Whereas for it, you will see a round regular border. Why? Because it is a tense bulla. Everything correlate guys. This I'm putting in a tabular form what we studied in part 3. Okay, now again guys, as mentioned earlier, desmoglin 3 high concentrations of patient, 90 to 95 patients will come with oral mucosal lesions. Whereas guys, in patients bullous pemphigoid, in bullous pemphigoid, you will only get 10 to 30% of the patients will come with oral lesions. Understood? I hope you have understood these two tables, revise it and correlate. Now guys, let us look into a little of investigations. Okay, for pemphigus vulgaris, since I mentioned earlier that acantholysis is taking place in patients with pemphigus vulgaris, hence on Zank smear, what will I see? I will see acantholytic cells. Understood? Acantholytic cells are also called as Zank cells, right? We mentioned this earlier. Okay, now very important guys is the histopathology of this patient. Look at this image. Okay, the first thing that I will see, we spoke about the split. What was the split? It was suprabasal in origin. So this is my suprabasal split. Okay, what are the cells that I will see? I will see acantholytic cells. You can see this clearly, acantholytic cells. Now very characteristic thing that I want to mention over here, and do not screw this up, is going to be your row of tombstone appearance. You can see this multiple row of tombstone appearance. See this beautiful row of tombstone appearance. Okay, tombstone, you know na, jo grave mein there's graves, multiple graves in one area is called as tombstone, hai na? So row of tombstone appearance. This is a very characteristic histopathology of patients with pemphigus vulgaris. Okay, this is a PYQ. Remember that. Okay, now guys, let us look on to the direct immunofluorescence. Okay, what we will see over here, we will see IgG and C3 deposits. Okay, and where is it present? It is present intraepidermal and intercellular. Intra means within and inter means between. Okay, I have explained this. Okay, how, what is the pattern that will give me? Look at this beautiful pattern that you can see where this is your characteristic fish net appearance. Fish net appearance. Okay, you will see this fish net appearance, right? You must have seen a lot of machiwalas, they take that net and they throw it off na to catch machis. Okay, fishes basically, right? So this is their fish net appearance that I will see. Okay, so what will I get? I will get a beautiful fish net appearance. Okay, so one thing that you cannot screw up in pemphigus vulgaris, first thing on their histopath you will see row of tombstone appearance. Okay, next on direct immunofluorescence you will see what? Fish net appearance. Okay, this is important, this is also PYQ. Okay, next guys, the treatment, you will start the patient on high dose steroids. Okay, high dose steroids. You can also give cyclophosphamide. If they will ask you what is this is the PYQ, what is the side effect of cyclophosphamide, the patient will come with hemorrhagic cystitis. Okay, one more drug that you can give is going to be rituximab. Okay, now guys, let us move on to the investigation of bullous pemphigoid. Bullous pemphigoid, it has nothing to do with acantholysis, right? As mentioned earlier. That is why on Zancks smear, what I will see eosinophils. What will I see on Zancks smear? I will see eosinophils. Okay, on Zancks smear I will see eosinophils. Okay, now guys, look at this image. Okay, this is going to be your epidermis. What is this going to be? This is going to be your epidermis. Okay, these cells that I can see over here, okay, these cells are going to be my eosinophils. Okay, this is eosinophils. Okay, and okay, so these are the two things that you need to keep in your mind. Okay, now guys, let us look at the direct immunofluorescence. Okay, in direct immunofluorescence for bullous pemphigoid, what I will get to see is what are the deposits? The deposits are going to be IgG and C3. Okay, where is it going to take place? It's going to take place at the basement membrane zone. Since guys, what was the target protein? Hemidesmosomes. Where were they present? They were present at your basement membrane zone, right? Okay, sorry guys, I forgot to mention one more thing over here. This guys, you see this space over here, this is your subepidermal bulla. What is it? This space is your subepidermal bulla. Understood? And this is a direct immunofluorescence. Okay, the deposit I mentioned, where is it present, that also I mentioned. Now guys, how does this look? You will see this very beautiful linear pattern. What is this? This is your linear pattern. Your linear pattern. Okay, whereas in pemphigus vulgaris, what was I getting on direct immunofluorescence? I was getting a fishnet pattern. Okay, don't get confused. Okay, this is for bullous pemphigoid. Okay, now guys, what is the treatment for patients with bullous pemphigoid? Is going to be low dose steroids. What will I give? I will give low dose steroids. Okay, just one tip guys, whenever you're studying, right, when there are topics that you can interrelate with correlated, guys, understand so that you don't get confused. If I give you this, like if you haven't revised or you haven't correlated and you're just mugging up, studying, simply not giving any attention, you guys will definitely forget this and you will screw up here. You might think this is for pemphigus vulgaris and that fishnet was for bullous pemphigoid. No, don't do that. If I'm studying about direct immunofluorescence over here for bullous pemphigoid, it gives me a linear pattern. I will also at the same time recall that in patients with pemphigus vulgaris on direct immunofluorescence, I will say fishnet pattern. Okay, so that it will stay in my mind and I will not get confused, especially when I'm under pressure. In the exam, you're going to be under a lot of pressure, right? So please guys, keep correlating so this basic mistake should not happen. Okay, now guys, let us move on to the next topic, that is dermatitis herpetiformis. Okay, Okay, so what is the autoantibodies that we'll see here? It is going to be IgA. Okay, what is the level of spread? Again, subepidermal. What else was subepidermal? Bullous pemphigoid. Okay, I will write it down here in the brackets, since when I will revise, I'll remember ki chalo theek hai. In bullous pemphigoid also I was getting a subepidermal. The level was also subepidermal, same. Okay, for what do you say? Bullous pemphigoid. Okay, I've written it over here. Okay, what is the target antigen, guys? Very important. Target antigen is going to be epidermal transglutaminase 3. Epidermal transglutaminase 3. Okay, what is the genetics that is related with it? Very, very important. This is also a PYQ. It is going to be your HLA-DQ2, DQ8 and B8. Okay, HLA-DQ2, HLA-DQ8 and B8. Okay, very important. Another question, the dermatitis herpetiformis is associated with what? With celiac sprue. With celiac sprue. Celiac sprue is also called as gluten sensitivity enteropathy. Okay, this is also PYQ, guys. Okay, remember this. I have put in QQ over there, means this is a previous question. Okay. Next, guys, what you need to know is the clinical features. Okay, what is the age? Age is going to be mostly 20 to 40-year-old wala insan aayega. Okay. What does basically dermatitis mean? Dermatitis means intensely pruritic. It's very, very itchy. Okay, and herpetiformis over here basically means grouped excoriations. Excoriations matlab scratch, itch marks, right? So you can see this. These are grouped excoriations. Okay, herpetiformis is grouped excoriations. Okay. Next, what you need to know is, guys, the sites, where is it present? It is going to be at the extensor surfaces. It's going to be at the extensor. What else was in the extensor surfaces? Can anyone remember? Very good. Psoriasis. Psoriasis also, I was seeing it in my extensor surfaces, right? You remember extensor psoriasis, right? Very good. Like this, guys, keep on writing down, and matlab, at points where you can remember, right? So matlab, where else did I see extensors? Like that, I keep on noting it down over here. Okay. Now, guys, in investigation for dermatitis herpetiformis, what I can see is the cells are going to be neutrophils. The cells are going to be neutrophils. Okay. Now, let us look at this. See, guys, this over here, this white space is going to be a subepidermal split. It is going to be a subepidermal split. Okay, and what is this group? You can see this multiple cells over here. Very good. This is going to be your papillary. It's going to be a papillary tip microapsis. Papillary tip microapsis. Okay, where else did I study about microapsis? Again, in psoriasis, histopath or psoriasis, we spoke about Monro's. We spoke about Monro's microapsis. We spoke about Monro's microapsis. Okay, again, ऐसा छोटा points, keep on writing it down so that you guys will not forget it. Even if you're revising like from top to bottom or whatever way you want to revise, at least it will be like, हाँ अच्छा, yes, there was a correlation here as well. Okay. Next, guys, let us look at the direct immunofluorescence. What will I get? What are the deposits? IgA. Where is it present? At the basement membrane zone and the dermal papilla. Okay. How? What pattern will it give me? This will give me granular pattern. What will it give me? It will give me this multiple. You can see this green. This is going to be my granular pattern. Okay. I'm going to erase the yellow marking so you guys don't get confused. Okay. So these you see, these are multiple granular patterns. Okay. Granular pattern. So let us just make a chota table over here and write. Okay. In direct immunofluorescence, what was I getting for patients with, let me just reduce this. Okay, for patients with pemphigus vulgaris, what did I get? I got a fish net appearance. Okay, for patients with bullous pemphigoid, what did I get? I got a linear pattern. Okay, I got a linear pattern. Whereas for patients with with dermatitis herpetiformis, what did I get? I got a granular pattern. Okay, so over here I have made a chota table which basically revised all type of direct immunofluorescence for me over here. Okay, done. Now, guys, let us move on. So what is the treatment? Now we already know that dermatitis herpetiformis is associated with celiac sprue, and celiac sprue is basically gluten sensitivity. So what will I do? I will give this patient gluten-free diet. This is going to be the treatment of choices. We'll ask you what the treatment of choice is: gluten-free diet. Okay, and under gluten-free diet, what are the foods that is restricted? What is the restricted food? The restricted food is going to be brose. It's going to be brow. Okay, brow. So what are you going to know about brow? For B is for barley. Okay, B is going to be barley. R is going to be rye. O is going to be oats, W is going to be wheat or suji. Okay, because in one exam they gave suji. Okay, so you can remember brow or brows. Okay, anything, but just remember this, these are restricted. Dena nahi hai isko, theek hai? Do not give it. theek hai? Next guys, what is a drug or choice if they'll ask you? Okay, treatment or choice agar pucha, gluten free diet. But if they'll ask you drug or choice, then you will say Dapsone. Okay, you will say Dapsone. Okay. Next guys, let us move on to the next chapter, that is appendigeal disorders. Okay, first let us look at the pilosebaceous unit. Pilosebaceous basically meaning what? Hair, your hair unit. Okay, now guys, let us look at this image. Okay, this is basically a rough image, a sketch that will basically help us understand hair a little better. Okay, so what is this first green structure that I can see? This is going to be my apocrine gland. What is this? This is my apocrine gland. Okay, what is this yellow? This yellow is going to be my sebaceous gland. This is my sebaceous gland. What is this red structure? This red structure is a muscle. It is an erector pili muscle. Like you guys get goosebumps when you're shocked or very excited. You get goosebumps, right? Like on your hand over here. So this is the muscle. This is the muscle basically which gets erected when you get a goosebump. Okay. So now let us know why I am learning about the erector pili muscle. This muscle will basically help divide. It divides my hair, okay, this hair segment into an upper segment and a lower segment. Okay, it helps to divide my this unit into an upper and a lower segment. Why do I want my this pilosebaceous unit to be divided into an upper lower segment? Is because see, you guys can see this my erector pili is the one that will divide, right? So it divides it into an upper segment and a lower segment. Guys, what you need to know is for my upper segment, above my upper segment, okay, above my upper segment is going to be my infundibulum. Okay, below my upper segment is going to be my isthmus. Sorry guys. Okay, below my upper segment is going to be my isthmus. Okay, whereas guys, above my lower segment is going to be my stem. Let me use a different color over here. It is going to be my stem, whereas below my lower segment is going to be my bulb. Okay, so this is why I need to know this about erector pili muscle. Okay, now guys, let us look at this very favorite question, hair cycle. Okay, what is in what stage? Okay, so in hair cycle you have different stages. You have the anagen, you have the catagen, you have the telogen and the exogen. Let us understand more about this. Okay, see guys, anagen, 85% of your hair cycle is going to be in your anagen phase. How much? 85%. Okay, what is anagen? Anagen is basically a growth phase. What is it? It is your growth phase. And for how long does the patient stay in this anagen wala stage? That is going to be 3 years. You need to remember this. Okay, it's going to be for 3 years your hair is going to be in an anagen, that is growth phase. Okay, next guys, catagen. Catagen is basically in involution. Involution basically means what? Destruction. It means destruction. Okay, how long, how much percent of my hair cycle is going to have this catagen? It is going to be only 1%. And for how long guys? Only and only 3 weeks. For how long? It is going to be for 3 weeks. Everything is going to be 3. Anagen 3 years, catagen 3 weeks. Telogen guys, telogen is basically a resting phase. Telogen matlab usko just remember like you're watching TV and you're chilling. T for TV, T for telogen, resting phase. So that is your telogen. Telogen, about 14% of your hair cycle is in telogen phase. And for how long? This is also important. It is going to be for 3 months. It's going to be for how long? It's going to be for 3 months. 3 years anagen, 3 weeks catagen, 3 months is going to be your telogen. Next guys is your exogen. Exogen is shedding phase. Okay. Now guys, let us move on to alopecia. Okay, alopecia. So in alopecia we have 2 types. We have the scarring and the non-scarring type. First let us look into the non-scarring type. Under non-scarring guys, we have a subdivision that is patchy type. Okay, under patchy type also we have various ones. So first let us look at our first patchy type, that is going to be our alopecia areata. Alopecia areata. What you need to know guys, that alopecia areata, it is an autoimmune disease. It is an autoimmune disease. What does it target? It targets your anagen hair bulb. We know that anagen is going to be your hair growth side. Now guys, about the feature, I want you to look at the image. Okay, everything about dermatology, it is clear, crystal clear. You can see it in the image. Okay, you just have to like analyze and understand. Nothing is there that you have to sit and mug up. If you know what the word means, you will be able to solve the question. Okay, now guys, tell me, this looks like a well-defined patch, right? It is a well-defined patch. it is smooth, okay, and you will see this complete hair loss in this very particular patch. Understood? This was all told to me with the help of this image. Now let us write that down, okay. It is going to be a well defined circular, okay, circular surface, okay, there's going to be a circular surface, and there is going to be a complete there's going to be a patch, right? It's a patchy type, so we'll write patch over here. It's going to be a patch of complete, sorry, let me just say this, okay, it's going to be a patch of complete hair loss. Okay, this was about alopecia areata. Now guys, let us know something more about the margin of lesions. You guys might have seen this question 100 times even in your college, okay, and even this is a very common PYQ as well. What is this mark, guys? This is your exclamation mark, okay, and where do you see your exclamation mark? These are seen in the margin of your alopecia areata, okay. So margin of this lesion will give me an exclamation mark, okay, very important. The image is seen, you can see this very beautiful exclamation mark over here, right? This one, right? So this is seen in an alopecia areata. Now guys, let us look at the nail findings, okay. The nails, okay, we will see pits, and how are these pits going to be? They're going to be fine, regular and superficial. I hope you guys can remember one more nail pits that we studied. Very good, we saw that in psoriasis. In psoriasis, the most characteristic nail change were nail pits. And how were they? Exactly opposite of this. If in alopecia areata you are seeing fine, in psoriasis you will see coarse. In alopecia areata you will see regular. In psoriasis you will see irregular. And guys, in alopecia areata, what did we see? It is superficial, but in psoriasis they are deep pits. Understood? You guys understood now how you have to correlate and study? This is how, okay, this is an extra point. I'm going to put it in a box, okay. This is extra point, okay. Next guys, in histopath what will I see? I will see peribulbar lymphocytic infiltrates. This peribulbar lymphocytic infiltrates is going to give me a swarm of bee appearance. What is it going to give me? It's going to give me a swarm of bee appearance. In swarm of bee appearance, basically your honeybees refer to your lymphocytes. Understood? This is the important. It will give me a swarm of bee appearance in histopath. If they'll ask you what is the treatment, guys, if it is a localized alopecia areata, what I will be doing is I will be giving intralesional steroid, and that is going to be triamcinolone. Okay. Now, guys, let us move on to the second patchy hair disorder, that is going to be trichotillomania. Trichotillomania, it is an obsessive compulsive disorder, and why am I studying about this is to understand better, okay. The very first important thing that I need to know is trichotillomania, guys, it is an incomplete loss of hair within the patch. What I mean by this is, look at this image. You can see it is incomplete. They have plucked it out from anywhere, like kahin se bhi nikala hai, kahin se bhi khicha hai bahar. They have plucked it from anywhere, here and there, okay. You can see it is incomplete, right? Whereas guys, in alopecia areata, I saw this beautiful, well defined, complete loss of hair, right? A patch that is complete. You will see this complete loss of hair, okay, in alopecia areata. Whereas in trichotillomania, it's the other way around. You can see the person has basically pulled it from anywhere, okay. So this is how you will differentiate between the two, between trichotillomania and alopecia areata. Next, what you need to know is, one more important point is that these patients will have perifollicular hemorrhage. What will they have? They will have perifollicular hemorrhage, okay. Next, what you need to know is very important, the associations. So guys, these patients who have trichotillomania, they will sit and they'll keep plucking their hair. Incomplete loss of hair hoga. Next, what you will know is they'll pluck the hair, and if they eat it, that is called as trichophagia. Phagia means to eat. So basically hair eating is basically trichophagia. Now I have eaten my hair. So where will it go and accumulate? It will go and accumulate in my stomach. So trichobezoar is basically accumulation of your hair in your stomach, right? Hair accumulation in your stomach. Hair accumulation in the stomach, right? This is your trichobezoar. Now what will happen, guys, since so much hair is getting accumulated in my stomach, what will happen? It will happen, gastric outlet obstruction will happen, okay. Pehle kya hua? I plucked it, trichotillomania. I ate it, trichophagia. After trichophagia, where did it go? It went and accumulated in my stomach. So trichobezoar. After trichobezoar, what happened is because of accumulation of hair in the stomach, there will be gastric outlet syndrome. Obstruction. Okay, so you can see this. This is a very beautiful picture of trichobezoar. Trichobezoar. Okay, this is the image. Okay, this is also this is also PYQ. Okay, remember that, guys, is association. Okay, so this is the whole thing. Okay, this is A, B, and C. Okay, now guys, let us look into tinea captis. Tinea captis is a non-inflammatory type. Okay, we're going to first discuss the non-inflammatory type. Under tinea captis, we have two things. We have a black dot endothrix and a gray patch, which is caused because of ectothris. First, let us look at the black dot endothrix. You guys, you can see this multiple black dots, right? This beautiful, you can see this multiple black dots, right? Okay, so what is the etiology of this patient? What is the etiology? What is causing this? Basically, it is going to be trichophyton. Trichophyton, guys, here I have denoted with the letter T. Okay, so what are the two species that are causing this? It is going to be Trichophyton thomsonensis and Trichophyton wallacei. Okay, this is the two species that is causing black dot, which is endothrix. Okay, which is going to be endothrix. Okay. Next, guys, what you need to know is this. I hope you guys understood the black dot over here. Now this gray patch. Now guys, this gray patch is going to be itchy in nature. How is it going to be? It is going to be itchy in nature. Okay, it is going to be itchy. Yeah, patient keep on scratching again and again. Okay, this gray patch, it is going to be ectothrics. And what is the etiology? It is going to be Microsporum canis. What is it going to be? It's going to be Microsporum canis. If they'll ask you what is a drug of choice, the drug of choice is going to be griseofluvin. This is a PYQ. Okay, remember that. Next, guys, we are going to talk about secondary syphilis. In secondary syphilis, you just need to remember what kind of a hair loss you will see. You will see moth-eaten alopecia. What will you see? You will see moth-eaten alopecia. Okay, so this is all for now. This is going to be your patchy type of hair loss. I hope you guys understood this. See you in the next part. Thank you.